So I don't know what it is about summer, but it always gets me in the KH1 mood. It's probably because one of my earliest playthroughs was with my cousins in the summer of 2003, and I've just been chasing that high ever since. But I can't really justify randomly playing KH1 again in my free time, so I figure making a video about it is the next best way to scratch that itch. Plus, there hasn't been a solely KH1 focused video in like 3 whole videos. It's been far too long. Friends. Hey, you know, I've been thinking lately about how much time Kingdom Hearts characters spend asleep. Sora takes a nap for a year, Ven takes a nap for 11 years, but my question is, did they sleep well at all? Those rooms look pretty bright, fellas. If only I had some help from, that's right, today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. For those who have followed the channel for a while, you might know that I don't take sponsorships very often at all, and that's because I only do so when I actually try out and really enjoy a product. Manta Sleep reached out to me and sent me a noise machine and a sleep mask, and I've been using them every night and sleeping like a princess. Or, more truthfully, I've been using them every day because I work some weird hours, and sometimes I'm heading to bed at the crack of noon. It's especially bright out, we're in the midst of summer, our curtains aren't doing the absolute most, but this mask blocks it all out and, most importantly, is extremely comfy. I'm someone who typically takes a while to fall asleep, but this mask has really cut down on those pre-sleep lying in bed minutes, and I've been getting to sleep much faster. Not to mention, the quality of my sleep has been overall better because what does this mask provide?
Supreme darkness!
That's right, complete blackout, so my sleep is deeper, and my mask is actually designed specifically for side sleepers, so it's got these C-shaped eye cups, and it's comfortable on my face regardless of which position I fall asleep in. Their masks are also adjustable, so it fits even on my big melon when I go to sleep looking exactly like this. So, if you want to join the pro-nap movement, maybe count some Thomas sheep while you're at it, you can check out the tagged products on this video and use code PATNAP at checkout for 10% off your order. That's code PATNAP for your orders with Manta Sleep, and hey, you don't even have to wear it to sleep, you can use it as a blindfold for some sort of challenge run. I've seen a lot of the D word over the past few years, the D word being discourse, of course, though a few Twitter DMs have definitely tried their best to complicate matters. Video game remakes are all the rage these days. They're nothing new, but I feel like they're especially chic in the late 2010s and 2020s. Naturally, these convos make their way to KH Town, which is no stranger to remakes, obviously. We do not have time to get into the whole what's a remake, what's a remaster, what's a port, what's an enhancement debate today, but I think it's fair to say Kingdom Hearts has seen 2 legitimate remakes in the form of Rechain of Memories and Recoded. Everything else that isn't the initial release of a game I would classify as a port, enhancement, or remaster. Or remix, as this series likes to put it. Now, even though they found and distributed the video game Holy Grail in 2002 and remastered it in 2013, people are dead set on full-on remaking Kingdom Hearts 1. And like, listen, it's not as if I wouldn't buy it and play it, but I just don't really need it. The remix version of the game, while possessing its early aughts sensibilities, still holds up relatively well in the modern era. The art style feels pretty timeless, so it would just feel weird to me to quote-unquote tune up the graphics. I don't really need it to look like KH3 in Unreal Engine 4. And what do you even do with something like Deep Jungle? We can't risk upsetting the undying angry spirit of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And if they remade KH1 and put flow motion in it, I would have to burn down a building. Think of the KH2 scene of the fire, but in real life. And I go to jail instead of getting a Mickey Mouse cutscene. So I'm not willing to go full tilt on this KH1 remake conversation, but I will entertain some augmentations. Yes, they already put this game in the final mixer, but what if we just kept mixing? I'm not putting it in the remake oven, but I think we can make perfect even perfecter. I present to you Kingdom Hearts Final Mix Advance. We can workshop the title if you want to make it Finalist Mix, or Final Mix 2, or Final Mix Revengeance. This is going to come out for current-gen consoles with the release date of, today. I developed it, and you can have it for free because I really like ya. What would the game include? I'm so glad you asked, the video would be done here unless you asked. Well, at its baseline, it's KH 1.5, but with even more good stuff, and also less bad stuff. I'm looking to make the most definitive version here, and I mean definitive. Nothing is hitting the chopping block, so we're making sure to include any and everything from any version of the game. So yes, we are making sure to include the special movie option that first appeared in the original Japanese release of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. Back in the day when you selected this, you were shown a trailer for the upcoming Final Fantasy X-2, which would release only a few months later in Japan. Now, granted, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for our KH1 Final Mix Advance in 2025 to randomly have a plug for 2003's FF10-2, which is why this special movie is instead for the Final Fantasy X remake that I've also just decided to will into existence. FF10 is another one of my absolute favorites, and from the same era as KH1, but I would argue that that game has a handful more scratches that could be buffed out and is more justifiable to remake. But if Square Enix doesn't like my idea, which I couldn't really imagine, but just to play Chernobog's advocate, they can just plug the Final Fantasy X 10-2 HD Remaster Collection. That's still modern enough and would serve as a fun homage to the original Final Mix menu. Speaking of, why not have the option to switch between both art pieces on the title screen? Give us Spooky Grim Reaper Sora and Feral Cat Fishbone Sora. Sure, you're probably not just staring at the title screen super often, but the choice would be nice. Maybe it just randomly rolls for which one you get when you boot the game up, or it changes based on whether or not you have a completed file. Maybe there's even a third new illustration if Nomura's feeling up to it. They just killed another one of his games though, so I'm not going to be the one to get him out of bed. You can do that. Let's get a big one out of the way and again give the player some options. Those Final Mix palette swaps. Nobody should have to live in a world where looking at Final Mix Trickmaster or Large Body is mandatory. I honestly can't believe this wasn't an option in the initial remix for KH1, 2, and Birth by Sleep, but just give us a button in the configuration menu or something that lets us swap from original colors to Final Mix. In fact, better yet, any Heartless that has a palette swap should have a button in its journal page that activates or deactivates its original colors so you can mix and match if you want. I'm sure, or I'd like to think, there's some sort of technical or artistic reason why this hasn't already been the case for a little over a decade, but isn't it also kinda weird how these are the versions of the games you're expected to play if you're a new fan, and then you play something like Recom, KH3, or Melody of Memory and the Heartless have their original 2002 colors? Like, if you're playing in order, the soldiers randomly take off their puke fatigues in Castle Oblivion and then put them back on when you next see them in Mysterious Tower in KH2. It's absolutely a minor nitpick, but I think showing off both sets of color schemes at least makes these situations a bit less jarring. The only issue with this journal page palette swap button idea is that you wouldn't be able to preemptively change the color of a boss Heartless since you wouldn't have its journal page yet. Wanted to see OG Phantom? Tough shit, he only shows up once. So maybe this is like a New Game Plus or Game Clear Data type of thing and you start the game with every enemy journal entry on a replay. I don't know, there's something here. I know there's a way to make this work and restore Trickmaster to his red and black glory. On the topic of bosses though, there's a few additions I'd like to make involving them. I think it'd be cool to look forward to some of KH1's successors and retrofit some stuff from those games into our KH1 FMA. The first thing I'm poaching from a sequel is 2FM's proofs and the crowns that go along with them. KH3 added 2 proofs in its 1.04 update, and the 1.07 update let you exchange them for Oathkeeper and Oblivion, which is no doubt cool, but where's my crown? And why only 2? Why not a third proof for clearing the data fights or even the damn battle gates? Maybe they couldn't think of a third Keyblade to exchange it for, but come on, Rumbling Rose is right there. I'm kidding for the record, that thing is putrid. But in terms of KH1 proofs, I think there's a few routes we can take. The simplest but perhaps most boring is doling out a proof per super boss. But then we kinda have to pick and choose which ones because there's 5 super bosses for 3 proofs. I think it would make the most sense to lump Ice Titan and Sephiroth together for 1 proof, Kurt Zisa and Phantom for another, and Zaddy Zemnis for the final. Not entirely equal, obviously, but the cleanest solution in my opinion. But in the case of KH2 and 3, not all of the proofs were combat related, so maybe we have 1 combined proof for defeating all 5 super bosses. Or even just make it so only either Sephiroth or Unknown gives one, since I think they're the most challenging of the bunch. Regardless, we'll have some sort of super boss proof, and we'll call that the Proof of Perseverance. And you already know I asked PJ to design some original proof icons. That leaves us with 2 more proofs, and in the same vein as KH3's Proof of Promises for taking pictures of every lucky emblem, I think it makes sense to have something similar for KH1 FMA, especially since exploration and collecting is a more core part of this game than a KH2. While it's easily less impressive of an undertaking than photographing all 90 lucky emblems, I think the closest thing to that in KH1 is finding every Dalmatian puppy. Granted, it's about 1/3 of the work since there's 3 puppies per chest, so maybe you could lump in completing every Trinity mark for a true collectible-focused proof. That still only gets us to 79 collectibles, but honestly, I'm fine with it just being the puppies because I really want to call it the Proof of Reunions and to have it represented by a little paw print proof icon. For our last proof, we've got a couple of options. We could just do something in line with KH3's Proof of Times Past and hand this one out for completing the game on the highest difficulty. To be honest, I think that's a bit lame and I'd rather not just straight up copy another proof, but we'll circle back to the difficulty topic. We'll circle back to Circle too, actually. We could go the route of assigning proof number 3 to something like sealing every keyhole, but that's a bit too easy. I also considered completing every gummy mission, but I could not fathom a less alluring goal. So I'm going to settle on the proof of fusion, which is granted for synthesizing everything in the Moogle synth shop. There's already a Moogle that bestows a fake Master Synthesis title on Sora, but maybe now he can hand over a Burger King crown too. But while we're here, let's fix the synthesis grind. I feel like one of the most common knocks against the real Final Mix is that the path to Ultima Weapon is a lot more arduous than in the original release thanks to the rare synthesis materials only dropped by the FM exclusive Heartless. I totally get it, but it never bothered me too much personally because it ultimately means I get to spend more time with this game that I really like. But I think it would be silly to suggest that things are perfect as is. Because as much fun as I have with this game's combat, which might already be a contentious point, but whatever, I derive exactly 0 units of joy from tilting the analog stick back and forth to enter and exit and re-enter a room trying to get a rare Heartless to spawn. Zaldin, what are your thoughts?
Where's the fun in this?
I agree, I cannot locate the fun. I don't want to remove all of the feeling of discovery and the random chance of stumbling upon a rare Heartless, but we need to pump up these odds a bit. Because, look, it's 2025, if a first-time player kills a Heartless they've only ever seen once and get a synth material that they notice is completely unique, they're either going to shrug and ignore the synth part of the game, or just go online and look up how to force that spawn so they can get their damn drops and be on their way. Frankly, that's exactly what people were doing in 2013 when the remix came out, myself included. And hell, I obviously wasn't over in Japan in December of 2002, but there's decent odds folks were having similar conversations on the message boards back then too. The internet has been around for a long time, and that should startle you. So we're gonna add in a new ability to help alleviate this grind. You've still gotta go out and harvest the materials, but this nonsense with the constant leaving and coming back to a room, or leaving the world, or even soft resetting has got to go. The actual Final Mix introduced the ability Encounter Plus, which is granted to you by the Synthesis Moogle after you craft 15 unique recipes. Final Mix includes 33 total recipes, and crafting 15 puts you in roughly the middle of the 3rd list of items out of 6 lists total. So I think we should aim for about the 20 recipe mark, and accomplishing that many recipes would prompt the Moogle to dole out the rare Encounter Plus ability. Now, for those who don't know, the basic Encounter Plus ability makes it so Heartless respawn after moving only 1 room or area away from them instead of the usual 2. Our new Rare Encounter Plus is just going to inject a raw percentage increase into the rare Heartless spawn rates. Not to nearly guarantee their appearance, but make it dramatically more likely. If this ability feels a little too charitable for your tastes, which it would be crazy to ride for big RNG, but in that case, we can also bundle the ability with a stat nerf to help balance things out. Sure, those jet balloons or Neo Shadows are more likely to spawn now, but you're saddled with a big drop in your defense, or strength, or both. Additionally, if 20 recipes still feels too early, I think it's also fair for the Moogle to hand this over to Sora as soon as the Ultima Weapon and its Donald and Goofy equivalents are unlocked in the synth list. That's the true final gauntlet of synthesis in this game, which demands a whopping 39 rare drops across 11 different types, as in you're making a visit to every new rare Heartless in the game. So that's my campaign for that whole business. I think it's time we say stopga to abusive synth demands. Alright, now that my approval rating as mayor of KH1 Town is at an all-time high, it's time to tank my support and suddenly become a hard-nosed bootstraps guy for some reason. Let me tell you about things we're not doing, handouts that will not be given, and public pressure that I will not cave to. Caving is for wonders, and do I look like a severed sand tiger head to you? Don't answer that, you son of a bitch, I'm sensitive. I feel like another big complaint that any version of KH1 gets is the lack of a treasure chest tracker like all of the other games have in their journals. And I totally get the completionist urge to have a list and check them all off. I do exactly that for KH2 and beyond, but I feel like I'm only doing that because there's a section for it in the journal and a trophy or achievement for it on whatever modern platform you're playing on. Do I actually care? I don't think I do. I think I'm just feeling the pressure of those grayed out chest icons. Because do I really need that blazing shard in Beast's room or something of that caliber? No, and not that I would miss that one, but if it were out of the way, I'm only hunting it down to satisfy the bug man keeping track of it in his little book. Some of my favorite exploration-based moments with this series came in the form of playing KH1 well into my 20s and finding stuff that was completely out of my grasp as an 8-year-old. No other game in the series comes close to that feeling of discovery, and if that's because of the devs' lack of foresight in having a chest tracker, then so be it. I think it enhances the game far more than it hurts it. And another thing, let me just activate my boomer drive form real quick. I totally understand the desire to unlock gummy warping upon first discovering a world. This is how it works for every world from Agrabah onwards, because by that point Cid's given you the warp gummy. But for that initial circuit of 4 worlds, you do have to manually take the trip every time. And to be completely honest with you, yes, it's boring. It's one of my least favorite things to physically be doing during a playthrough, and yet I firmly believe it is a necessary evil. It's a big eat your vegetables component of this game's world building. KH1 has, in my eyes, an unmatched sense of scale, this feeling of actual distance between these different planets. KH3 also does a great job with its fully explorable and relatively vast sections of gummy space, but even that game I think has a harder time selling that distinct atmosphere, that feeling of true separation and sense of travel between worlds. Part of that, I think, is that you can warp to any world after visiting it for the first time, which, yes, extremely convenient, no one is denying that. But I think that initial loop of worlds in KH1 really imparts this feeling of going on an actual journey, and you get to feel a real sense of progression when you do finally get that warp gummy. It's like, hell yeah, I'm moving up in the world, or worlds in this case. For the record, if you want to hear me talk more about the gummy stuff in particular, I did a video a while back that focused entirely on this stuff. This is like an old regular Pat B-side that I always recommend as much as I can because it never got all that much attention, and it's entirely my fault because I gave it a dumb and pretentious title, and it's also about the fucking gummy stuff. Anyway, shit, we gotta win the crowd back. Here, have some MIDI files. I'm not really much of a stickler for OG music over the remastered versions, and that goes not just for Kingdom Hearts, but for basically anything. Usually I'm like, yeah, some of these tracks were given an upgrade and some lost their oomph, or I don't even truly notice that much. I think the latter always tended to be the case for Kingdom Hearts with me because there was a fairly substantial gap between playing the original releases and the HD remixes. But I can't really come up with a reason to not have the option to switch between the original soundtrack and the remastered one. I can think of a handful of other games that offer the same thing, like the Spyro Reignited trilogy or even the aforementioned Final Fantasy X remaster. Unless there's a technical or performance-related reason for their lack of inclusion, I say put that toggle in the configuration menu. When it comes to stuff like this, the more options the better in my opinion. And you know, I'm sort of veering into the territory of things that are more often done for compilations more so than single games, but how sick would it be to just have the whole soundtrack available from the main menu? I think it'd be great to have an in-game way to listen to tracks that only show up a few times per save file, or just whatever track you feel like hearing, without having to go to a specific world, or, you know, YouTube. Again, make it a post-credits unlock if we really want to make it feel special, and to keep the player from listening to tracks that they haven't reached in the story yet. While we're on the topic of music, this next thing might be the most minor change I'll make in our game. It's our game now, by the way, we're co-parenting. Why are you out so late? Why won't you look at me? There's this scene in Destiny Islands called The Outside World. It's the scene where they're all sitting on the Paopu tree talking about their plans to ditch the island. By the way, this is the last time all 3 of them are on screen and talking to each other until this moment in KH2, which is absolutely banana splits bonkers. I don't know if this is just a me thing, but it drives me up a wall that the basic-ass Destiny Islands field theme is still playing in this scene. It just doesn't work for this chiller moment that takes place at sunset, and I find it kind of bizarre that this was even the initial version of the scene in 2002, because Yoko Shimomura did compose plenty of non-field or battle theme pieces for this game. Treasured Memories, for example, is a track that only plays once during KH1, although it does get reused a handful more times throughout the series. 12 more times to be exact, shout out to the Wayfinder project. Granted, that track plays literally the scene right after The Outside World, so I get not using it twice in a row, plus it's a little too somber and pensive for the convo happening here, which has a sort of light and adventurous tone. To that end, I think pulling the Rechained of Memories version of the Destiny Islands field music and plopping it into this scene would do wonders. In fact, I already did it. Here's just a snippet of it, but if you want to hear it in full, I uploaded this on my second channel years ago.
So, Kyrie's home is out there somewhere, right?
Could be. We'll never know by staying here.
But how far could a raft take us?
Who knows?
I also replaced the music in this scene with At Dusk I Will Think of You from Days, Destiny's Union from Birth by Sleep, and One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII because I'm an asshole. There might be a few other occasions throughout the game where a music switch could feel a bit more appropriate, but nothing that immediately jumps to mind for me like this one does, so let me know if you have any suggestions. I'd love to do the same exercise for any other scenes. Let's pivot back to some gameplay stuff. I can't believe I have 2 points about enemy HP bars, but I sure do have them. First off, even I can admit that we should just get scan built in from the start, or at the very least by the time we leave Destiny Islands. As someone who's played the game casually, done speedruns, and level 1 challenges, I don't really think anything is added by not knowing how much health an enemy has. I guess it can make fights more tense in the early game, or the entire game in the case of a level 1 run, but in reality, I've always just found it kind of annoying. Every game post KH1 gives you scan either from the start or very early on, and I see no reason not to retrofit KH1 with the same accommodation. Make it an equipable and unequipable ability if someone is more purist about this game than I am, but I personally will keep that shit turned on. Of course, unlike future games where scan is a fight bonus or a default ability, it's learned at levels 9, 15, and 21 in KH1 FM depending on which dream weapon you picked. But we don't even need to rearrange anything in the level up chart because you're still granted stat boosts at those levels, and there are plenty of levels where you only get stat boosts and no ability unlock, so no problems there. My other health bar change pertains to the presentation of enemy health bars, which is different in KH1 than it is in every game that follows besides original GBA Chain of Memories. I personally always liked the multicolor bars in KH1, it was just kinda cool to have that more visually prominent indicator of an enemy being tougher. The bars would start out green, but stronger enemies would add new colors on top of the green bar, starting with yellow, then orange, pink, and purple. In fact, some bosses have so much health, the purple bar isn't enough to cover it, so that additional health past purple is just invisible. Which is really dumb and bad, and should be changed, because this could lead a player to believe that they're not doing damage to the boss when they actually are. So I guess I really have 3 changes to the health bars, just add a 6th color after purple. But ideally, the entire multicolor health bar thing should be optional, and there ought to be a toggle for the modern style with the consistently green bars and those squares underneath to represent any additional HP bars. I don't personally prefer it, and I think it's easier to tell when a boss is approaching a new phase or a DM by referring to the bar's color rather than the amount of squares depleted, but this is mainly an accessibility thing, and I imagine this is the reason why it changed in the first place. Lingering Will is already tough enough, there's no need for an additional nerf if you happen to be colorblind. You know a great thing about Lingering Will, by the way? Even on the same save file, you can fight him as many times as you want. If you're into masochism, I guess. You've been listening to me for a while after all, so that's pretty easy to clock. But outside of the final gauntlet bosses that exist after the save point of no return in each game, there are very few bosses that can be refought, and I find that annoying. It's not game-ruining by any stretch, but like, wouldn't it be nice if you could hop into a boss fight again if you wanted to? Without having a save file for every world, which I do, but I'm trying to propose a solution for people less unwell than I. Characters like Sephiroth and the Ice Titan lucked out by partaking in a tournament, so they're free to both dish out and receive ass beatings at any hour of the day. Literally anyone outside of other cups or the Ansem stuff beyond the door is 1 time per save file. So let's just add a boss rush mode upon game clear. Just a menu you can access from a save point or something, and you can either select any individual fight, one specific world, or go through the entire game's boss gallery without anything besides the HP and MP in your bars and the items in your pocket. If we really wanted to go the extra mile, we could have a toggle that scales the bosses to Sora's current level. Now you can fight Leon in Traverse Town at level 100. Fuck it, why not? I know KH1 isn't exactly the game in the series that people are most excited by when it comes to combat, but this is just the type of thing that I would like in really any game. Maybe back in the day it would have cheapened things and made these moments feel less special if you could just hop back in at any time, but this is already a hypothetical second enhanced version of KH1, and our boss rush is a post-credits unlock, so I think it's entirely fine. We're adding some pretty substantial stuff now, so let's keep up with these big ideas. Donald is always asking what the big idea is, and I'm happy to announce it's this stuff. I think it would be really cool to restore some cut content to our new version of KH1, but I want to be careful about how we do that because I don't want to make the game feel too different or for it to conflict with future games. For example, one of the classic KH1 fun facts is that Disney Castle was originally intended to be playable before eventually getting cut. Now, as cool as it would be to somehow add that in, there's no real way of doing that in a canonical way without messing up dialogue about Disney Castle in KH2, in which Sora has clearly never seen the castle before. I'm sure some kind of classically Kingdom Heartsian thing could be invented to excuse why Sora can access the castle in KH1 and then not find it familiar in KH2, like a dream sequence or something, but I think this is all a lot of effort for something that doesn't really have that high of a ceiling anyway. Like, how do we work this into the story being told in KH1, what's added by us going to Disney Castle, and does it even matter since we end up getting to go there in KH2 when all's said and done? Not to mention, we don't really have a way of recording new lines for the cutscenes unless Sora is just entirely mute for the trip, so the whole thing would be relegated to text bubbles anyway. Now, something like the cut crumbling island area in End of the World might be a different story. For those unaware, this room was likely going to host another boss battle against Ansem, probably at some point after entering Homecoming. I don't know if we have a full story on why it was cut, but I could imagine it might have to do with lessening the bloat of this final gauntlet, as there's already a lot of stuff going on after opening the door in Final Rest. If it was cut for pacing reasons, I don't think it's a must-have to get the fight re-implemented, though I certainly wouldn't complain, but I also think it'd be cool to have this room show up somewhere between the Chernobog battle and Final Rest, and this could actually be the room we use to access the boss rush, like a sort of KH1 Garden of Assemblage. The area can have portals to all the different boss fights scattered around, and you can kinda just hand-wave the weirdness of going back in time to fight bosses because the End of the World is a fucked up little place with weird rules regarding time and darkness and stuff like that. Did you guys know that Bahamut was originally going to be a summon in Kingdom Hearts? Of course you fucking did, you've been on the internet for, at minimum, 5 minutes. This is like the fun fact about this game, although its fun value depreciates just a little bit every time the fact is uttered. But how about instead of crashing the game when you select Bahamut, he actually shows up and, like, kills some guys? I don't know how far they got with Bahamut, we've only ever found his name in the summon dropdown, so it's likely it never got past conceptual stages, but Square Enix would have the opportunity to do the funniest thing and invalidate the Watch Mojoist factoid about Kingdom Hearts. I personally would love for our Bahamut to be based on his Final Fantasy X design, which would make sense considering that was the most recent Final Fantasy prior to KH1, but his more traditional Serpent design would also be great. Given that you get the Mushu summon gem after defeating Maleficent, Bahamut would have to show up even later in the game. I was thinking either after beating Chernobog or as a reward for sealing every keyhole. Because that way, if you do things in the right order, you can receive the Bahamut summon a mere 20 seconds after talking to Winnie the Pooh. Speaking of Pooh, oh shit, I never circled back around to Circle. Why can't we put a magic shortcut on Circle? Your younger brothers let us put a magic shortcut on Circle. KH2 was developed for the same system and controller as you, so what gives, buddy? Honestly, I have no idea. Maybe they thought it was too cluttered, or they made the assets for the shortcut menu and then they realized, ah fuck, we forgot the 4th button. Well, I don't feel like resizing this, let's just ship it. I can't think of a technical reason that this was easily done in KH2 but not 1, so I say let's retrofit KH1 with a custom slot for Circle as well, that's just a slam dunk. While we're at it, might as well let us put items on the shortcut buttons too. It's not something I use super often in the games where you can do that, but again, I like having the option and it can't be too crazy to program. And actually, let's jump from the circle button to the triangle button. No, you godless heathen, we're not putting reaction commands in the game. The 1.5 remix already did so much for us by letting us skip cutscenes, why would I add more unskippable cutscenes? No, I'm talking about using triangle to quickly equip and unequip abilities like in KH2. The KH1 menuing in general is a little bit sluggish and funky to me. I can't really put my finger on it, but I just know it could use some streamlining, and one of the simplest fixes is the more efficient shortcut for putting on and taking off abilities. Similarly, I think a button that sends equipped items or accessories right to the stock would be ideal. Saves us some button presses and UI navigation. Oh, should there be a critical mode? I mean, probably, right? Proud KH1 can be tough, but it's not really on the same level as KH2 or 3 critical. And if you play on level 1, the game is a bastard, and the most reliable way to get through certain fights just feels like straight up cheating. Like, sorry, I am not fighting Chernobog on your bullshit level 1 without Mushu spam. So, you know, add critical mode so we can hit a sweet spot of difficulty. It's crazy because that's such a big addition, but I have, like, nothing to say about it. I'm sure it's, like, an intricate process when it comes to the coding, but I sure as hell don't understand it. Just buff and nerf the stats accordingly, right? Moving on. To something in a similar vein, pro and easy codes. I certainly don't think these are nearly as coveted as something like a critical mode, but again, why not throw them in? You can have Riku and Kairi standing with the Final Fantasy kids during the Dive to the Heart, and you can turn on pro or easy codes with them. Of course, a lot of the codes from Remind don't really work in KH1, considering the codes affect a bunch of stuff that didn't exist yet, so those ones obviously wouldn't be brought over. But a lot of them still work, like HP and MP slip, no summons, no cure, no items, stuff like that. And that's all fine and good, but I think the most exciting part of adding the codes would actually be the easy code merits. I love the idea of those little challenges in the KH1 context. Stuff like killing a bunch of Heartless in one Proud Roar, or like taking out a set number of Power Wilds in the Climbing Trees area in Deep Jungle, I don't know. Anything that gets me doing new stuff or thinking outside the box in my favorite game is a plus in my book. But forget the plussing in my book, what about gussying up my look? How did the customizable clothing options not return for KH3 after debuting in 0.2? I think I've heard the answer to this before, or at least some speculation about it, but I've definitely forgotten. Point being, there's still time to fix this. Granted, I think a feature like this would feel the most out of time when compared to other things we're adding, so I don't want to go overboard with this stuff. I'd want to keep it to things like those proof crowns, nothing jarring or, for lack of a better word, anachronistic, like we're not giving Sora a baseball cap. But maybe different necklaces or bracelets, or if we really want to get crazy, different colored shoes. I think it'd be especially cool if Sora could get stuff based on worlds he's completed, like maybe a shell necklace from Atlantica or a fez from Agrabah. And you know where you would buy this stuff? Agrabah. It seems kinda weird, but hear me out. While I love Traverse Town in KH1, I feel like it really monopolizes the entire economic system in this game. There's literally nowhere else to spend your money. Besides Agrabah for a brief moment when the peddler does a cheeky home invasion, but only during your initial visit to the world. And even as a kid, I always found it weird that the core of Agrabah proper is this marketplace, and yet there's nothing to really do with it. I totally get not having access to it during the first visit, the whole city is overrun by Heartless, but then after you seal the keyhole, the invasion stops. And then it starts again. Honestly, one of my biggest critiques of KH1 is that sealing the keyholes never feels as consequential in gameplay as it does in the story. Everyone acts like shit is getting back to normal, that peace finally rules again, except no, it super doesn't. Heartless still spawn where they always did, save for exceptions like Guillotine Square and Halloween Town, which, frankly, that should be the move for a ton of these worlds. I completely understand why Heartless still spawn in these areas after your first visit. It's obviously just so you can still have places to grind mobs, and maybe a room filled with mobs is overall better than the alternative of it being empty because they didn't have the time or tech to flesh an area out with NPCs. It's story and gameplay segregation at its finest, or I guess least fine, because I do think I'd prefer to see a bit of a change in the status quo to make it feel like my actions are having an impact on this world. It's not like we don't have a wealth of options when it comes to rooms to fight Heartless in. You're telling me even after the keyhole is sealed, King Triton can't get his own fucking front yard in order? I just want to establish a couple of safe zones to make it feel like sealing the keyhole is actually worth a dick. And you can tell this is important to me because doing this would mess up a handful of videos and spreadsheets I've made about Heartless spawns. But Triton's Palace is one example of a place that should be free of Heartless post-keyhole sealing, and I think the camp in Deep Jungle is another prime candidate. And you can still keep the white mushroom spawns there because they're non-violent anyway. But the most important and noticeable of these new safe zones, to get back to my original point, is Agrabah. And I mean the whole city, but especially Main Street. This change is twofold, because it, one, makes it feel like we've actually done this world some good by stopping Jafar and sealing the keyhole, and two, it gives these rare Agrabah NPCs some time to shine. This is also on the KH1 fun fact iceberg, but these NPCs only appear immediately after you seal the keyhole and disappear the second you leave the world and never show up again. And I don't know about you guys, but it always felt like it was a mistake that this happened. Like, I know that it isn't, but doesn't it make more sense to either have the NPCs not show up at all or always be there? I mean, I'm willing to bet that well over 50% of players don't even leave Aladdin's house after beating Agrabah. They just hop in the save point and leave the world, and they never even knew these guys existed. And I'm not saying it's a travesty that they're so missable, they're all literally just Traverse Town, or in one case, Destiny Islands models with different colors, but they've got some fun flavor text, and again, make the world feel more lived in and more successfully rescued from the Heartless threat. Honestly, it's cool that Squaresoft designed original characters to live in a Disney world even if they are just palette swaps. So yeah, some or all of these guys would sell different wearable accessories for Sora, equipable in a new Outfits tab located in the equipment menu on the pause screen. Also, throw in the peddler and the unused guy in the game files, why not? I should say, it may seem dramatic to take all of these Agrabah rooms and make them peaceful after sealing the keyhole, but we have an entire Cave of Wonders to hunt mobs in, so I think it'd be fine. And to really make sure that this is airtight, I think the Pot Scorpion can still stay at the palace gates. It's not like this guy can just show up and mug you. The only way you're fighting him is if it's your first time and you don't know what breaking the pots does, or if you're actively trying to pick a fight. So if the pots appear in the center of the room, Agrabah and Waka just won't show up there until you leave and come back. And hey, speaking of rooms with Final Mix exclusive Heartless, can we talk about how the Chimera spawns in the Manor Ruins in Halloween Town? You know, the original Kingdom Hearts was overall pretty polished, it didn't have all too many glaring issues or bugs, but there was the issue of that Oogie's Manor Red Trinity. This is probably one of the more famous fixes in the series, but for those who don't know, the original release of the game had a Red Trinity in this first room of Oogie's Manor, and if you didn't activate it before defeating Oogie Boogie 1, it was just gone forever, and you were locked out of completing every Trinity. Final Mix fixed this by moving the Trinity to the bottom of the manor and put it on this archway near this little stream so you can access it at any time. Really good call, except this fix also still needs to be fixed because even after doing the Trinity, it still just shows up. They went too far in the opposite direction. Originally, it would disappear before you were ready for it to, and now it keeps showing up even if you're done with it. So, to be clear, you can do this red Trinity, collect your prize, leave the area, come back, and the Trinity just reappears, but it's not interactable. And I guess the idea is that it serves as a visual indicator for whether or not the Chimera is gonna spawn, as in, it's there when the Chimera won't spawn and vanishes when it will. Is it just me, or is that really dumb? It feels like another glitch or oversight, if anything. Like, why does that have to be the indicator? This is the smallest, stupidest nitpick I have in this video, but it drives me nuts! When you do Trinities, they disappear forever. That's how they work, that's what they do. Just make the queue something else, like one of the pumpkins on the fence is on the floor. It's just so funny to me, like why is this red Trinity so hard to get right? If you couldn't tell, I'm really getting into the nitty-gritty now, like I've just got a bunch of bullshit left, but let me present one of the maybe less pedantic additions. I think traveling between save points within any given world is one of the best quality of life features that KH3 added, and I think I'd like to see it implemented in our new KH1. You could argue that since the worlds in KH1 are obviously smaller and more contained, adding this feature might sacrifice the sense of adventure, but the thing is, you still can do this even in the original release of the game. You just need to hop in the gummy ship and then land in the world again and select a different save point. It's just what I'm proposing, but longer. So I don't think too much is lost by adding intra-world save warping, it just saves us some time and extra button presses. Although, I will say, on the topic of save points, I do feel like their closeness and frequency is kind of a detriment, but I might just have that feeling because I've been playing the game for so long. Maybe back in the day, before I knew the worlds like the back of my hand, the save points were paced out perfectly, but nowadays I feel like it's just a bit too easy to zip on over to a save point to get a full refresh of HP and MP. But honestly, I think save points functioning as points to save your game is frankly obsolete by now. I don't think anything is lost by letting us save from the menu unless there is a technical reason that would really break things by letting us do so, but that's obviously not like an industry-wide problem. Back when save points in general were more ubiquitous than autosave or saving from the pause screen, it made more sense for them to appear more frequently and in close proximity to each other. Like, it was a very real thing for your mom or dad to tell you to get off your console, but you needed to actually physically get to a save point, and to that end, the relative commonness in KH1 is a convenience. But I feel that a modern Kingdom Hearts game, including our new KH1 Final Mix Plus, should let you save wherever, and save points as we know them should primarily serve as a way to refill your bars and access the gummy ship. Or change your party members, which, hey, there's something I didn't have on my list before I started talking about this point. We'll get to that. But to wrap up save points, or I guess recovery and transit points after this rebrand, I think their frequency really devalues items like the camping series, the tent, camping set, and cottage to be specific. I basically never used them even when playing the game casually as a kid, because why bother when a save point is usually only a short walk away? Even in a speedrun, there's only like 2 or 3 times where using a cottage is worthwhile. So, I don't know, maybe a critical mode might take a few save points away to amp up the sense of danger. Like, do we really need a save point in the Agrabah storage closet and Aladdin's house? Well, yes, so we can skip the alleyway during a speedrun, but I'm not going to cater to a microsection of the player base, which includes myself at times. Fuck it, you know what, on Critical, we're going full Spyro the Dragon Moneybags mode. There are Moogles hanging out where some save points were in the original game, and they'll help you set them up for a small fee. We need more reasons to spend money in these games anyway. And yeah, let's get back to that party switching business. I've long held the opinion that being able to switch your party members in the field would be way more useful in KH1 than 2, considering there are collectibles in this game that demand you have Donald and Goofy with you. But listen, we don't need to make it an either-or, let's just take the KH2 party swapping mechanic and put it in KH1. I get what they were going for in KH1, they wanted something special that only SDG could do, and that's great and all, but more than anything else, it served as a deterrent against bringing along the world-specific party members, which is a shame because they're really cool. But it's also incredibly annoying to come across a Trinity and have to hike back to a save point just so you can swap party members and then walk back to the Trinity. And then potentially go back to a save point if you really want to continue traveling with the party member you had in the first place. All of this frustration instantly relieved if we can swap on the fly. Now granted, I don't know where you put this swap button because KH1 doesn't have a second command menu like KH2 does. We could make one, but we'd just be exchanging summon for party swap, which is fine, but it feels a bit weird if only one of the command slots is different. So alternatively, this would be something you could do from the pause menu outside of combat, just like at a save point. Or, the best option yet, just let us do trinities regardless of who's in the party and just have the missing Donald or Goofy show up for the animation and then leave when it's done. Once again, returning to the topic of story and gameplay segregation, the game's story is constantly implying that every party member is traveling with you at all times, you just don't see that in the gameplay. Like, you can walk into the Jafar fight without Aladdin in your party, but he's still gonna show up in that cutscene. So let's just cut the bullshit. I don't think anyone's immersion is getting any more broken than it was by moments like that, or any other time a world-specific party member is in a cutscene despite being benched in the name of Trinity Collection. Alright, time to really bitch. I'm going full turbo nerd. Give me the alternate cutscenes in the game's theater mode. Which, by the way, wasn't in the remix from launch. They added theater mode as free DLC, so first off, that'll be there from the jump in our sweet baby that we're raising together. It's your turn to sing the little bastard to sleep, by the way. But this would be so easy, the files are obviously already in the game, just make them selectable in theater mode for completion's sake. I'm talking the Snow White version of the first villain's cutscene, the losing or winning version of the fights where you're allowed to lose, namely Darkseid 1, Leon, Cloud, and Sabor, and all of those weird-ass Riku scenes you get in Monstro if you end up playing the world after starting Neverland. Just take the normal name of the scene and add parentheses alternate, plop them in their own little section at the bottom of the theater mode list, and you're good to go. While we're back on the main menu, wouldn't it be great if beating the game unlocked a little concept art section, maybe even some promo materials like old trailers and commercials? Let's show off Lion Chainsaw Sora, or hell, even the scrapped Toy Story World icon since Toy Box is officially in a game now. Let me watch that original crusty Disney Channel commercial with Simple and Clean again, preferably with the CRT filter. Maybe even throw in some scans from the Ultimania. I'm not saying the entire book, but just some snippets here and there. Again, I know these ideas are more in line with stuff that compilations or big anniversary re-releases do, but it's my dream project. Or fine, let's delay the game, and now it's coming out in March 2027 to celebrate KH1's 25th anniversary. That would make me feel slightly more justified in adding all of these bells and whistles. This is a really tiny one, but can the customize menu let us change the order of magic spells in the dropdown? I don't mean just the shortcuts, I mean the long boy magic dropdown. I'm very rarely in a situation where I need to use a magic that's not on my shortcuts, but it does happen occasionally, and it'd be great to put the one I need most often at the top of the stack instead of it always being fire. Look, if the Pokemon devs, the laziest people in the industry, can let you change your move order, I think KH1 can be afforded the same courtesy. That was a joke, by the way. I don't think they're lazy, just ruled by cheap and lazy corporate overlords. This isn't a must-have, especially since the cursor retains memory, so you can preset your preferred magic spell by hovering over it and it'll stay in place, but I'm feeling like a corporate overlord today, aka greedy. I want a soft 5th shortcut, because of course we also greedily added a circle shortcut to this game earlier. Another loose end type of change here, but way back in a KH1 Fact video I did, I talked about how after you clear Hollow Bastion, the Wonderland NPCs actually get new dialogue. And it's the only Disney World that does that, which I think is really strange and maybe a matter of time constraints for the original release. Like those Agrabah NPCs, it's just flavor text, but I like the idea of the world's citizens reacting to the stronger Heartless that are unleashed onto the worlds after sealing the final keyhole. So I'd love for characters like King Triton, Dr. Fink, and Jane to have updated dialogue reflecting the heightened Heartless threat. No voice lines needed, they can just come up with some text bubble stuff. Did you folks know that I really love Pikmin? I think it's like my de facto second favorite game series after Kingdom Hearts. Frankly, I might even wager to say it has a higher batting average, like the worst Pikmin game is way better than the worst Kingdom Hearts game. Okay, ignore Hey Pikmin for 3DS, I know I sure did. Of course, Kingdom Hearts has a way bigger place in my heart, go figure, but what it doesn't have is Piclopedia, until now of course. I don't mean that in like a one-to-one way, but it's the closest comparison I could come up with. Jiminy's Journal is already extremely cool. I spent hours flipping through the pages as a kid, but it would be even cooler if you could play the enemies' different attack animations when you have their 3D model pulled up. Or hell, let us enter a little journal room through a button on the enemy's page and you can spawn one in just to mess around with. It wouldn't do any damage to you, just make you flinch when it lands an attack, and it wouldn't give out any experience when defeated. In the same vein, I would like to be able to see the alternate models for SDG like the other games have. Just a button on their page that switches their models. Halloween Town, Atlantica, Disney Castle for D&G, and young baby Sora, Riku, and Kairi, because why not, we're already here. All of this is like wholly unnecessary, but at this point I'm going balls out. MP balls specifically. And with that, we've arrived at my last change, one that aims to fix one of the more glaring flaws in all releases of KH1. I tend to find the game less confusing to navigate than the average player, again potentially by virtue of playing it so often and for so long, but even I've identified a few bridges too far. I'd like to fix some of the more notorious progression issues in the game, and there's two big ones I'm thinking of. The first is triggering the flag that lets you move on to the Leon fight in Traverse Town. This is done by either defeating 5 shadows, or visiting the 3rd district and seeing every mini cutscene of Sora just barely missing Donald and Goofy when exiting an area. The game, of course, never tells you this, Sid just recommends that you look around town. Now, I like organic exploration as much as the next guy, assuming the next guy likes organic exploration, he might not, but this is just a bit obtuse. It's also kind of difficult to fix, but here's my idea. I don't want Sid to outright reference the Heartless or monsters in your first conversation with him, because that kind of steps on Sora's reaction to their appearance in the 2nd district after the Heartless score a touchdown on Travis. But I think as soon as you get that scene, if you go back and talk to Sid, he should say something like, "Hey kid, be careful outside the 1st district, there's monsters out there, but if you think you can handle it, I'm sure the folks in town would appreciate you taking a few out. Tell you what, bring me back some proof and maybe I'll give you a discount," or I don't know, something. The proof in this case would be money, which you'd only be able to get from killing shadows. And then Sid either does or doesn't give you a discount, maybe he's a lying jerk. Welcome to town, kid. It's still not perfect, but I just need something in the game that nudges the player in the right direction. The other big stinker in this department is the damn dolphin in Atlantica. It's not all bad, but parts of it are incredibly arbitrary for no real reason. You need to ride the dolphin from the undersea valley through the strong current to reach the sunken ship. This is fine, except in order to get the dolphin to appear in the valley, you first need to ride it in the undersea gorge, the area outside Ariel's grotto. I don't even think the initial concept of interacting with the dolphin is even a problem, because Flounder has some dialogue that pretty much tells you that progress is tied to grabbing onto the dolphin and reaching an inaccessible area blocked by a current. Now, once you manage to grab onto the dolphin in this area, either through clearing out some Heartless or finding the sweet spot where the command menu is blue, the dolphin will take you on a ride, and he'll just keep swimming in a circle. And if you let go, he just keeps doing that, except minus you holding onto him. So, this is really bad, and it doesn't convey to the player that anything has been accomplished in the way of progress. You might take your ride, hop off, and think, oh, I guess I did something wrong? Maybe you have to kill all the Heartless in this room, and then something happens? I mean, Heartless don't spawn when you're riding the dolphin, but maybe? Oh, okay, nope. No, what you need to do now is leave the area, go to the undersea valley, find the dolphin again, and do the same thing, only this time it actually takes you somewhere. And then push you back into the goddamn current if you don't move quickly enough. Looks pissed, by the way, I literally never noticed that until now. Mind you, you have to do the useless and confusing dolphin ride in the gorge before it moves on to the valley, which you don't even see it do. So yeah, let's knock all of that off. Either just have the dolphin initially spawn in the valley, or keep it in the gorge, but when you hitch a ride, it actually takes you to the valley. We know it's no big deal for it to move between rooms because it does that when it takes you from the valley to the sunken ship. If we really must keep the 2 dolphin rides, it can take you from the gorge to the valley, get spooked and shake you off when it runs into some Heartless, and then once you interact with it again, it proceeds to the sunken ship. Again, I can excuse a lot of stuff in this game, you can figure out a lot by paying attention to cutscenes or talking to NPCs, but this is just egregious. But fear not, I fixed it. Sorry, we fixed it, I guess it's your baby too, or whatever. And there you have it, those are my 30 ideas for a hypothetical KH1 Final Mix Plus or Advance or whatever we end up calling it. I'm going to nail this script to the front door of Square Enix headquarters and, unrelatedly, maybe start a religion. If you'd like to help, you can check out patreon.com/regularpat. The Regular Pat Patreon. It's not a cult, but will ruin your life if you call it that publicly. And speaking of the Patreon, this entire video is actually inspired by a question submitted to my weekly Q&A series. Samurai Karasu, a patron of mine, asked what were my ideas for a KH1 Final Mix Plus. And so in that episode of Regular Rambles, I talked about it for maybe 10 minutes, and then it evolved into something that was about 50 minutes, so... That's the YouTube game, taking a smaller thing and stretching it out, making it longer. And another reminder to use that PatNap promo code for your Manta Sleep orders. If you use the tagged products in the video, that actually helps me even more. And again, I'm not BSing. If you skipped through the ad, I don't know why you'd be watching this, but my inbox is filled with junk sponsorship opportunities, like real brands, but like things that I don't believe in or care about, and I'm not gonna sell those things to you. I did some NordVPN stuff in 2021. I still use NordVPN. I showed off a cookie business that was actually owned by a patron of mine because I love those damn cookies, so I'm not showing you the Manta stuff unless I think it's legit. I literally wear it every night and I sleep so much better. I guess this is a long outro, but video took a little while because the summer has been kind of crazy. I went to Denver, Colorado for Cage Reconnect 2025, where I got to meet so many people in the community and I got to drink so many drinks. One of the coolest weekends of my life. Just so awesome to meet people that have either been just screen names or faces on a screen, and to like hang out with them and shoot the shit and just have a ball. It was so cool. The podcast that I have with PJ, No Sad Face, you can go check that out if you're not subscribed to it yet. It's a bi-weekly podcast in which we talk about each game in the series. We're just about to wrap up our first season. We won a Million Dreams Award for news and podcasting at the MDAs this year, which was fantastic. Thank you to anybody who voted for us. And the big headline, which you might already know if you follow me on various social medias or didn't mash through the sponsorship ad, I got engaged. I started this channel at the end of August 2019. We're coming up on 6 years now, and I was so very single. So did not expect to be here, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. And it really is all thanks to this, because I wouldn't have met her without this. So I say it all the time, but you folks watching mean the world to me, especially the ones that sit through the outro, because why would you? Who cares about this part? But I need to let you know, and I feel like I do this all the time, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I don't take a single one of you for granted, and I'm just so thankful for all of this. Again, coming up on 6 years, there's not going to be another video before that anniversary, so hell of a 6 years. Wow, that's like longer than I've done anything. Besides like breathe, but sometimes I take a day off. Alright, you know where to find me. Regularpat.com has all my socials. I will see you next time. Be safe, be kind, be courteous, and the credits roll now, so your names will be bigger if you're a patron. Okay, love you, bye.